I have on the screen a map of the Middle East. And this map is all about Bible prophecy and the end times. And I'm just going to kind of leave it as a background here, putting some things on the board, just so this kind of sinks in, soaks in, and you begin to take away a latent image of what's going on. This is the easternmost portion of the Mediterranean Sea. This is the Persian Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz, all these places you're hearing about in the news today. This is referred to as the land between the seas. This little piece of real estate right here that we're going to talk about this morning and throughout the day, and how it's involved in prophecy and why it's involved in prophecy, etc. This is the little Palestine, Holy Land, put whatever label or title on it you want. This book comes from this little piece of real estate right here. Virtually everything in this book is about this little piece of real estate. If you believe that Jesus was a real person and came here as a real person and lived some 30 plus years here, this is where he spent his earth time, right here in this little piece of real estate. I've flown over Israel, been to Jordan. I know what desert looks like, and why anyone would ever fire a bullet for a square inch of that real estate, I don't know. Because it is not, quotes, the promised land that we envision. It is not the desert blossoming as the rose that we envision when we, read the Bible. As for the River Jordan, out here you call it a creek. Down south we call it a creek. It's just a trickle of water. There's no great River Jordan there. And so images that many of us have, most of us have, of what this holy land, this piece of real estate is all about, really are kind of Hollywood images. We're going to talk about this real estate in view of the time of the end of the world, and why this is the place that pulls the trigger. This is the place that lights the fuse, right here. Well, once again, I don't want to say anything to offend anyone. That's not my intention, but I need to put some things on the board. We're going to talk about the New World Order, on the way to the One World Order, and we need some background. So let's do it this way. Islam. Most of us pretty well aware of Islam on the planet these days. There's 1.3 billion adherents. That's a lot of folk. That's about 15 to 20% of the people on the planet. See, 1.3 billion adherents, Islam. Now, Islam worships Allah. And just a bit about the basic tenets of Islam. They believe that Allah chose Muhammad, that Muhammad is the mouthpiece for Allah, and Muhammad has left Islam with the instruction that you are to own the world. You are to conquer the world. You are to subdue the world. You are to take possession of the whole world. And then you will present this conquered world to Allah through his various imams and so forth. All right? So these people believe that it is their calling, their commission, their duty to own the world. That's a pretty big chew right there. Judaism. They worship Yahweh. There are people who try to tell you and me that Yahweh and Allah are one and the same. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. I mean, not if you understand the Bible, if you know the Bible. These two religions on the planet are monotheistic. You know what that means? They believe that God is one person and one person only. Period. And they have the Quran and they have Old Testament Bible to say so. And they are very adamant about what they believe regarding the person of God. Notice singular, the person of God. One of the reasons the Jews rejected Jesus was because he came along and said, I'm the Son of God. And they said, this is blasphemy. You are making yourself equal to God. God has no son. God is one person. And so it's very difficult for this other great religious element on the planet to have any discussion here and here. It's very difficult. Because straight away they see Christianity as you believe in a multiplicity of gods. You believe in more than one God. And this is a source not only of friction, but of hatred, bloodshed, warfare for thousands of years. Now, there's no 1.3 billion Jews, Israelis on the planet. So I'm just going to say that there are a few. I'll add to that in a moment, and you'll see why. Over here, I'm going to put Catholicism. Well, why didn't I put Christianity? Because Catholicism claims to be the only true Christianity on the planet. And as a result of 2,000 years of history and movies and all the rest of it, the world sees the Catholic Church as, quotes, representing Christianity. All right? I have to put Catholicism here. 1.3 billion adherents. I'm looking at you. Now watch. These guys believe that they are destined to own the world. And they make no bones about it. They believe that Jesus left Peter and the Catholic system, the papal system, to conquer the world. And when Jesus comes back in the clouds of heaven, hand him the deed. Right? Now let's see if I understand this. These guys claim the same territory these guys claim. That spells trouble. Here's the hitch in this get-along. These guys are only a few, but they own the real estate. Do these people claim it? Do these people claim it? But these guys are sitting on it. And these guys say, we're going to get you off. And these guys say, we're going to get it, but we'll come about it in a different way. We'll talk about that down the road. Now here's what most people don't know. Here's what most people don't know. That the papacy in Rome is one of the chief architects and sponsors of the New World Order. Looking at you. A lot of people don't know this. They don't understand. By and by, when you see the DVD, you're going to see a sculpture that's unique on the planet. You're going to see a sculpted world, and there are only 2 copies of this sculpture in the whole world. One is at the Vatican in Rome, and the other stands in front of the UN. There are statements multiplied. Well, we'll get to those as we go along here. I need to have you understand that we're on the way to a new world order. Many people have not made the distinction between the new world order and the one world order, which is to come, which is to follow. Many people confuse these two. If Bible prophecy is being read correctly, something is going to happen here to initiate, to launch, and we're going to have about 7 years of wonderful misery on the planet that's going to end in Armageddon. Through the day, we're going to be talking about crisis number 1 that launches. That's the first fuse. This is just in front of us, just ahead of us. We'll see in a few moments that this has to do with a coming war between the West, the United States, and Iran. Here is crisis number 2. This opens the door for the one world order. And finally, the final crisis, that's Armageddon. And that's the kaboom boom. That's the end. Now, if you travel and you meet lots of people, and I'm privileged to do so, we find that there are many classes of people out there. And when I'm saying classes, I'm not talking about socioeconomic strata. I'm talking about the varied backgrounds that people have in life. There's some people who are born and reared in a church environment, whatever the denomination, whatever the religion. There are some people who are, well, religion is, you know, it's comfortable because we have young children and we want them to be exposed, and because we go to have communal fellowship and make friends and whatever. And then there are people who have no real background at all in religion. And you come to a seminar like this and you start talking about the Bible. Well, they don't know Genesis from, you know. And my challenge is to make all these varied classes comfortable. Don't want anybody to feel as though because they don't know every book in order and how to, you know, have no real background in this book, they should not feel as though they don't belong. They don't need to hear. They need to hear. For thousands of years, human beings have gone to their shamans, their doctors. They've thrown turtle bones down. They've looked at cards. They've, you know, looked at the livers of animals. They've done to try and predict the future. They've watched the stars, the movements in the heavens. We call that astrology. All people for thousands of years have tried to get a handle on the future. It's really interesting that the disciples, this is after Jesus' death, his resurrection, and now he's showing himself to his disciples. Basically, the first question out of their mouths is Is this the time? Are you going to restore the kingdom now? Is this the time? And there's this very interesting comment from Jesus. He said, one, it's not for you to know the time. Two, no man knows. Three, the angels don't even know. Four, there's only one person who knows, and that's God. That's the Father. Jesus said, I don't even know myself. That's because he set aside divine privilege and divine status to become a human being. Doesn't make him less than divine, but he doesn't have the privileges yet that were once his. Foretelling the future is easy. I can tell you the sun's going to come up tomorrow morning. I'm foretelling. I'm telling you right now the sun's going to come up tomorrow morning. And probably for 100,000 days or whatever, I'm going to be correct. I'm going to be absolutely correct in my prediction that the sun's going to come up. But if you know what this book says, it says that one morning it's not going to come up. And wouldn't you like to know which morning that is? Only God knows. And through the prophets, he says that day will come. As a matter of fact, it says in one of these prophets that the sun will go down at noon on a clear day. Now, the way the ball operates, if it goes down at noon on this side, it's coming up at what time on the other side? Midnight. Wow. What? Yeah. Somebody has to try and sort out, well, how in the world could the sun go down at noon and come up at midnight? So the rock we're on must be going through some very fancy gyrations. And the prophets say that in the great day of the Lord, the sun's going to stand still and the moon's going to stand still. Well, how can that happen? Well, they're not really going to stand still, but the apparent motion is that they're going to stop and stand still in the heavens. And you can do that by precessing the rock that we're on, by looking at you. Because Isaiah says, in the great day of the Lord, the earth will reel to and fro like a drunk man. The pieces to the puzzle are here. We just have to see. I want to bring you back here. We're all familiar with the expression sibling rivalry. That means you punch your brother or sister in the nose, or vice versa. Ishmael was the first son born to Abraham. Isaac was the number 2 son. Now, in a patriarchal society, patriarchal system, the number 1 son always receives what? The birthright. And what did the birthright include? All the spiritual blessings and all the material wealth and blessings. In other words, all the dough. Okay? We could say Ishmael was an accident. No, he wasn't. It was a deliberate act on the part of Sarah, Sarai, and Abram or Abraham, because God had promised and promised and promised and promised Abraham and Sarah, you're going to have a son. And She was 40, and then she turned 50, and then she turned 60, and then she turned 70, and then she turned 80, and she said to her husband, this is not going to work out. And when people come to the conclusion that God is not going to work out what He has promised, they always put some man-made thing in there. All right? And so she said to her husband, I'm cursed, because if a woman had no children and was barren, it was because she was cursed of God. But if a man had no son, no heir through which he could pass along his name and etc., then he was also cursed. And she came to him and she said, I'm cursed. That's enough. You're not going to be cursed. You take my handmaid, Hagar, an Egyptian, and perchance God will give you a son through Hagar. And He did. And this was Ishmael, firstborn. When the time came to pass out the blessing, see, the birthright, God refused Abraham permission to give it to Ishmael, to put His hand on the head of Ishmael and pronounce the birthright blessing. If you really know the story, you'll see and hear Abraham saying, oh, please, won't you accept Ishmael? No. No. Ishmael is man-made. Isaac is heaven-made. How old was Abraham when Isaac was born? Come on. He was 100 years old. How old was Sarah? 90. She was 90. Was that an impossibility? Yeah. Now you know why when he was born they named him Isaac. It means laughter. Yeah. I mean, when you're 100 and you're 90 and you got one of these bouncing around, what else can you do? I mean, you can cry. And I'm sure they did a few times. Let's say it again. Ishmael is man-made. Isaac is God-made. Now we need the other side of this coin. We need to know why God said no to Ishmael. Does God not love Ishmael? Is Ishmael not one of God's children? Is there no provision in heaven to, have Ishmael and Ishmaelites and so forth in heaven? No, that's not the case. What's the case? Listen. When God spoke to Abraham, He said, no, no. And He said it emphatically, and He said, because no son of a bondwoman, that's a slave, will ever receive. Now you and I need to understand that, because we are children, we are slaves, all of us on this planet. We are all slaves to death, to sin, to all the bad things that have been passed along. And so God said, no, the son of promise has never been in slavery. Yeah. Because he passes along that slavery to his posterity. He has to be free.